Fairwood Village Shopping Center?
Yes.
Okay, familiar with the moisture problems they've been having there in the past 3 winters?
Yes.
Still having some moisture problems there?
Yes.
Did you bring some papers with you?
Yes, I did.
Is there a declaration in there that was prepared by the attorneys for the plaintiff here?
Yes.
Okay, would you get that out, please? May I have it? I would like to mark this as defendant's next in order.
Number, please.
Would you mark that Q?
Counsel for the plaintiff seen that?
They prepared it.
I don't know that. I'm asking only in this courtroom.
I've got a copy. It may be the same, Your Honor, although a quick comparison indicated that there's some additional typing on the first page of the proposed exhibit.
You got me. Does it say the same thing ultimately?
I don't know. That's why we have to read it a little more closely.
Please do.
Here's another one. This is the same as the exhibit.
It appears to be substantially the same as the one that we had in our file, although there is some change in language. Go ahead.
Mr. Morris, this is the declaration that came out of your file?
Yes, it is.
Okay, where did you get it?
Mr. Patterson sent it to me from San Francisco.
Okay, did he request that you sign it?
Yes, he did.
Did you refuse to sign it?
In his letter, he said if the declaration is accurate, sign it and call him.
Okay, excuse me, is the declaration accurate?
Somewhat, but we had a discussion on the telephone. There were 3 items that weren't accurate.
Briefly, what are the 3 items?
Okay, and starts with me. Ready? Could you describe him for us?
He had short brown hair. I believe it was kind of curly. He was probably about 5'7". He was taller than me. Yeah, about 5'7", but I don't know his name. I never knew him by name.
Was he a regular at the rink?
Yeah, he was there pretty regular. I remember always noticing him in the races.
Do you remember what he was wearing in the race that evening?
No, I don't. I can't remember who else was in it. I can't even remember who all was there that night.
During the course of the race, after the race started, did you concentrate on any particular skaters, or did you watch all of the skaters, or how did that?
I was watching Russell for a while. I was mostly keeping my attention on Russell or Pee-wee.
Why is that?
Because they're about the 2 best skaters, and I don't know, it's just really interesting to watch those guys race and skate. I know when my husband is in, I concentrate on the 3 of them, or, you know, just the better skaters.
Who was leading the race at the time when the collision occurred?
I believe Russell and Pee-wee were up in the front, and I would say Russell may have been a foot ahead of Pee-wee.
Did I understand you to say that Russell was on the inside track and Clarence was on the outside track?
Yes.
I would really like you to focus your attention and play back in your mind the race that evening for, say, the 20 feet just before the collision, before they touched. How close together were they?
Close enough that they could touch. They could just reach out their arm and touch.
Neither one of them could reach out and touch the other?
Because those guys usually try to stay pretty well on the outside during the race, and if one wouldn't let him on the outside, then they usually stayed really close until one could get on the outside.
I believe when you were describing earlier for us what happened, you indicated that Rusty made some sort of a movement following which his left skate collided with Clarence's right skate. What sort of movement did he make?
I'm going to object to that. That misstates the testimony.
What I'm asking, Mrs. Smith, is what sort of movement Rusty made before the collision?
Well, he was moving his skate. It's hard to put in words. He was moving his foot forward, sort of like a walking position, but it was so he could keep up his speed and keep up his skating. So he was moving his foot to continue skating.
Moving his foot in relation to his body in a straightforward line?
Yeah, well, this is really hard to put in words. It was like he was taking a step, either walking or running, but he was on skates, and it was like he was taking a step.
Did his skate leave the ground?
Yes.
About how far off the ground did it go?
Maybe an inch at the most.
This is his right leg that we're talking about, is that correct?
Yes.
Was his leg extended forward, or was his...
He was just moving it forward.
Mike, when you say this is his right leg, what are we talking about? Are we talking about the leg that came into contact?
That's what I'm trying to understand, and my understanding is that we're talking about the leg that came into contact with Clarence, Sarah.
That was his left leg that came into contact with him.
Okay, thank you.
She's previously testified what happened is Clarence's foot was moving right, his right foot was moving right, and Fernandez's was moving left. and when they're both going, they both walk.
Yeah, their skates just sort of hit and locked.
So it was his left leg going forward?
Yeah, it was his left leg that he was moving. Well, it was his right leg that he had just moved to continue his skating to keep up his speed. And then it was his left leg he just had started to move, and it locked with Pee-wee's.
So he just started to move his left leg at the time the skates locked?
Yes.
I believe you testified that. Now that was a turn when this collision took place?
It was just after the turn.
Just after the turn?
Uh-huh.
At the moment of the collision between Clarence and Rusty, we can use Rusty if you're more comfortable with that.
That's just what I'm used to calling him.
What direction was Pee-wee faced in relation to the rink?
Well, he was facing me, so his front was facing the front of the rink where the record room is.
Was he faced then straight down the straight part of the track?
Uh-huh.
And what direction in relation to the rink again was Rusty facing at the moment of the collision?
Russell was just about where he was turned to face me completely, so he was still sort of, his body was still sort of twisted a little bit
Pointed
because they had just come out of a turn.
toward the outside of the track, is that correct?
Yeah, it would be pointed sort of not completely facing, but sort of angled where it would be half of his body was like to me, and half of it was to like where Clarence fell or Pee-wee.
So he would have been faced about halfway between the...
So if you're familiar with the rink, it would be sort of facing the restrooms, the side with the restrooms.
And you did see Clarence fall?
Yes.
Once Clarence fell on the ground, well, what part of his body touched the ground first, do you recall?
He went down and I seen his knee hit, his leg sort of hit the side.
Side of what?
Well, there was a little step up from the rink to the side where everybody can stand and stuff. And then there's benches. It hit that little step, his knee, and then he rolled over on his back.
From the time that he fell to the rink floor, did anyone else come in contact with him?
Not that I recall.
Do you recall that anyone didn't come in contact with him, or do you just not recall?
I don't remember anybody else falling or anything.
Several times, Mrs. Smith, earlier while Mr. Allwater and Mr. Kelly were asking you questions, you indicated that there were many things going on during your life at that time. Was that a particularly difficult period for you?
Yeah, in a way.
What was going on with your life at that time?
I had a lot of
Objection, irrelevant.
You can go ahead and answer.
I had a lot of family problems, and me and my husband, one week we would be together, and the next week we would be broken up, and I had a child, and I was real young.
Okay.
Just for the record, there are times, Mrs. Smith, where you may hear objections being made, and that's just for the purpose of making sure that the record is clear. So if we have to go to court later on, we can let a judge sort out whether that's going to be into evidence or not. So if I object, or Mr. Arwater objects, or Mr. Smith objects, it's not like we're going to get into an arguing feud here, or at least we'll try not to. It's just for the purposes, again, of preserving the record.
Off the record for a second.
Referring again, Mrs. Smith, to the evening at the skating rink where the collision and fall took place, other than the collision between Rusty and Pee-wee, did you see Rusty collide with anyone else that evening?
In that race, or
Any time that evening?
Not that I recall. I know during a run of Shoot the Duck, I ran into him, but I don't remember him falling with anybody else.
Let's leave out Shoot the Duck for a moment. If I understand Shoot the Duck correctly, that's a fair game and the intention is to knock other people down.
Yeah, but this one wasn't intentional.
Other than Shoot the Duck, during the period of time that you knew Rusty Fernandez and saw him skating at Skate World roller rink, did you ever see him knock other skaters down?
Uh-huh.
On how many occasions?
Once that I remember.
I'm going to object to relevancy again.
You can go ahead and answer that. When was that, Mrs. Smith?
I don't remember. It was one time when my husband and I were up there. It was my husband that he knocked down.
Was it after you were married or before?
It was before. We weren't even fiancés then.
How did he knock him down?
He tripped him, actually. He hit his foot on purpose and made him fall.
Was this while they were skating?
Yes.
Was it during a race?
No, it wasn't during a race. It was just free skate. He was getting even with Joe is what he was doing.
To your recollection, that's the only time you recall Rusty knocking someone down?
Uh-huh. Like I said, they used to always just be real rough with each other and chase each other and stuff. They used to always get thrown off the floor for being too rough.
I don't have any further questions at this time.
I've got a few. During the first telephone conversation between you and Clarence Sarah that you described, I think you said that he asked you what you remembered happening. You described what you saw, and then he asked you, I may not have it right. Let me back up a minute. I believe you testified that during the second telephone conversation you had with Claire and Sarah, after the fall, he asked you if you would testify that you saw Russell Fernandez knock him down. Is that right?
Yes.
And you said that you wouldn't because that's not what you saw. Is that right?
Uh-huh.
Did he say anything during the conversation that indicated to you which he believed to be the accurate version of the incident?
I don't recall him really, getting any impression.
Did he say anything during that conversation that indicated to you that he knew that he was asking you to testify to something that was not?
Objection leading.
I'll start again. Did he say anything to you that indicated to you that he knew that? Same objection?
Same objection.
Okay, let's have that be applicable to the question, and that way I can ask it the next time without interruption.
I apologize for interrupting.
Did he say anything to you during that conversation that indicated that he knew he was asking you to testify to something that was not true?
Now I will state the objection. Leading.
But you may answer.
Well, just when he offered me the money, that would be enough right there to tell me, just the way that he was telling me he would pay me, that he didn't really, I don't know, with Pee-wee, it's hard. You never know whether he's telling the truth or not.
Does he have a reputation for not being honest and telling the truth?
With a few people, yes.
What about the third telephone conversation? Did he say anything during that conversation that indicated that he knew he was asking you to testify to something that was not true?
I will interpose a leading objection,
But you can answer.
but you may answer.
I'm getting good at this. Well, just again, the way he was trying to convince me to do it, just come on, Donna, you can do it. Just the way he was trying to convince me and coax me to say what I didn't see. But he never came right out and said that, I know that's not what happened, or I know you shouldn't do this, or anything like that. He's been known to try to buy friendship.
Do you know of any other case in which Claire and Sarah has offered anyone money to testify or to do anything else in connection with this lawsuit?
No, I don't know. Nobody's actually told me. Someone told me that he was giving people good drugs and stuff to testify.
Who told you that?
Gary?
Did he mention any names other than Claire and Sarah's?
No, not in the way that Pee-wee is giving anybody anything. He was just talking about the case.
Can I interject a question here? Because we've got a lot of hearsay on top of hearsay here. Did Gary indicate that he had heard that statement about the drugs from other people?
I believe he had just heard it. He didn't actually say he knew, but his exact words, I guess Pee-wee is turning people onto this really good crystal to get them to testify.
Did he indicate whether that was his personal knowledge or that had been relayed to him?
I got the impression that it had been relayed to him.
Thank you.
Is crystal a narcotic?
Yes.
Do you know what the chemical composition of crystal is? Is it known under another name?
Speed, amphetamine, adrenaline.
I think you said that if someone were to leave the drink during a skating session, they would have to pay again to get back in?
Yes, unless it was to maybe run to your car for a second or something, but then Gary timed you.
Do you know why Skate World has established that rule?
Because there used to be people that would go out and pay to come back in, but they would come back drunk, or they would go out and get drunk or do drugs, and then they would come back in and skate some more. It used to cause a lot of problems. There used to be one person there that used to get drunk all the time and get sick all over the rink.
Is it your understanding that that rule is enforced in Skate World to prevent people from leaving during the skating session and becoming intoxicated or?
That and that Gary is cheap.
I think you. That sounds fun.
I think this one's a little bigger.
Pee-wee rose me.
Hey Cindy, this one's bigger over here.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you hear Elvis? Dad gave a special treatment yesterday? No. My dad works there. I took pictures. So he gave us our own parking spot and we got to the hamburger line quicker.
Oh, I didn't even see it. Over there. Okay.
It's nice. Okay. My daughter wore that exact shirt today. Really? Yeah. Okay, I am Defense 1, Mr. Kirschner, Kershnar.
I'm second defense, Mr. Rollins, Rollands.
I am the witness.
I'm for the plaintiff, Mr. Henson, Henson.
Is this when we keep talking about real estate?
RAE.
Okay, this is good colloquy practice. All right, so we're starting off with margin defense attorney at the top. Ready? Now that you've gone on for about 10 pages, I'll say 2 sentences. The first day of this deposition, we provided summaries for all periods in which they existed. You deemed that unacceptable and wanted to go file by file. I have no objection for you asking questions about any file. Please ask a question.
Okay, on the particular file that you have there, when would credit have been given to Mr. Koch for that sale?
Now, what file are we looking at? You spoke for 10 pages.
Let me have it back.
And then you said the file there.
Okay, this is Bram Reen, R-E-E-N. Bram is B-R-A-M, 11738 Mayfield Avenue in Brentwood, with a typed unsigned bid form dated with a typewriter January 16, 1987 for $4,400.
You previously identified it as January 27th.
That's what I just said.
You just said January 16th.
There's 2 bid forms then. One says January 16 and it was redone on January 27.
All the more reason for clarity.
No, it's not a reason for clarity. So will you tell us when credit would normally be given for that particular job?
Sometime between January 27 and the date we performed work, which was February 4th of 87.
This one here, I guess, is the one we have a difference on. Maybe I can get a copy of this one file here to make an exhibit.
Would you like to do the honors on the copy machine? Where's the file that's a copy of?
He's got it on his lap.
May I have the file, please?
Okay, mark this as Exhibit 50, I guess, unless you have the next number we have.
50 is satisfactory.
Is your company still doing work for Wiseman Development?
Objection irrelevant.
I haven't done anything in the past few months.
Okay, then I'll show you Century West Development for 3848 Mentone Avenue in Los Angeles with a bid form dated January 27, 1987 for $10,530. Can you tell us when credit for that would normally have been given to Mr. Koch?
You said the bid was dated January 27, 1987. We did work August 21st of 87, so sometime in between there.
All right, you didn't have a copy of their signed bid form?
No, there doesn't seem to be anything else in here. Just one other note in here saying schedule the job for August 21st. That's all there is in there.
All right, then we have a job for Sedeco Construction with a bid form dated January 9, 1989. Can you tell us when credit for that would have been normally given to Mr. Koch?
What is the address?
It's 1134 Campbell and Glendale, and you said 89. I know you meant 87.
I'm sorry.
Okay, work was performed January 26 of 87, so sometime in January of 87.
And I wrote down 89 when he said it. Don't blink.
Then we have one for Wingate Real Estate Investments with a bid form dated January 19, 1987 for $3,933. Can you tell us when credit for that would have been given to Mr. Koch?
The address for this job would have been 302 West Grand Avenue, so the bid was dated January 19, work performed June 30, both in 1987, so sometime in between those 2 dates.
Would the credit normally have been given when the signed invoice was received?
Well, there is no signed invoice.
I mean the signed bid. The customer who signed the bid returned it, is that correct?
It just depends when it came into the office. I can't verify that they signed it on the 27th, that it didn't come in sometime later because it looked like we had already done the job by the time the signed contract.
When was it the job was done?
Well, sometime before May 11, 87. We, for some reason, didn't put in the date shipped this time. So in this case, it looks like we got the contract after we did the job, and credit would probably have been given in May of 87.
Then we have Wiseman Development, the bid form of January 27, 1987 for a job at 11827 Goshen Avenue in Brentwood. can you tell us when credit for that sale would have been given to Mr. Cope?
We talked about another job, or the work was performed on January 7, 1987, so sometime in January or February of 87, because there's no signed contract, no signed proposal.
Well, give that to me again, please.
I object, the question has been asked and answered.
Okay, will the court reporter read it back? All right, then we have the group that you marked for February of 1987. Okay, the first one has a bid date of February 25 for a job at 3365 Hughes Avenue, Hughes, in West Los Angeles for $21,240.
What is the customer's name, please?
Westgate Development Incorporated.
3665 Hughes, I believe you said 33.
Okay, this folder has a signed proposal dated August 5, 1987, and we did the work on October 9.
So normally credit would have been given August 5?
Well, sometime between August and October.
All right, then strike that. Let's go ahead and take our lunch break here.
Resume at 1.
Yes, go ahead.
What is your title here at Arrow Creek?
President,
And is there a vice president?
yes.
Who is that?
Dean Brown,
Is there any other vice president?
no.
Objection, irrelevant.
Is there a secretary?
No,
Objection, irrelevant.
no.
Are there any other officers of the corporation?
Objection, irrelevant.
Chief Financial Officer, my wife Carol,
Are there any directors?
Objection, irrelevant.
just Dean and I.
And when was the last time there was a board of directors meeting?
Last September,
Were there minutes kept of that meeting?
yes.
Do you have those minutes here?
No, I don't.
Where are the minutes kept?
Objection, irrelevant.
Kept by the Vice President,
When was the last meeting before last September?
previous September.
So you have a board of directors meeting every September?
Basically,
And Mr. Brown has minutes of all those meetings?
that's correct.
Is there a separate bank account kept between your office and the San Diego office with Mr. Brown?
Objection, asked and answered.
I didn't ask if there was a separate bank account,
The first day you did.
not a separate bank account.
Yes, you did.
Is there a bank account?
I don't know what you mean.
Does your company have a corporate bank account?
Yes,
Okay, is that in San Diego or here?
it's here.
And is there also one in San Diego?
For Arrow Creek?
Right.
No, there's not.
When is the last time there was a dividend payment for Arrow Creek?
Objection, irrelevant. I'm going to instruct him not to answer.
For what purpose?
It's privileged financial information.
It's not privileged financial information.
Sure, it is privileged financial information. You have no legitimate basis to inquire.
Sure we do.
No.
Was part of the reason that you let Mr. Koch go was because you weren't making enough money at Arrow Creek?
It was to cut back overhead, that's true.
And was there a dividend paid for 1988 to the stockholders?
I don't believe so.
Was there one paid in 1989?
No,
Was there one paid in 1990?
I'll object.
no.
That's irrelevant, whether in 1990 there was.
Are you on a salary here?
Yes, I am.
Do you receive any bonuses or commissions or other payments besides your salary?
Objection, irrelevant, invasion of privacy.
I receive no commissions, no bonuses.
Pardon me, could you repeat that answer, please?
I receive no commissions, I receive no bonuses.
Thank you.
So all you receive is your salary?
I receive a car. My car is paid for by the company.
Okay, is anybody else's car paid for by the company?
Objection, I see no relevance in that at all. Irrelevant.
Nobody else's is?
No one else.
Has your company ever paid for any cars other than Clifford's car?
What do you mean?
Well, has your company ever supplied any cars to employees?
All the other employees, up until a few weeks ago, supplied their own vehicles.
What happened a few weeks ago?
Bill Wilson bought a car.
Did the company make a profit in 1989?
I don't recall if we did, and if we did, well, it was small.
Did it make a profit in 1988?
I don't remember.
How about in 1990?
I don't remember.
Did it make a profit in 1991 so
I
far?
haven't gotten any financial statements for 1991.
Did Mr. Brown receive a salary from the company?
No, he did not.
What does Mr. Brown receive from the company as far as financial?
Well, I really think an objection should be made at this point. Irrelevant and instruct him not to answer. It has no bearing on this lawsuit.
In December 1988, did you do anything to decrease the overhead in Arrow Creek?
As I remember, Kevin White, who had been fired to replace Clifford, was taken out of the office and put back in the field.
Is that all you did in 1988?